Welcome back. We're going to continue our study in Daniel, and we're going to be going into Daniel chapter 11. Very detailed chapter, very detailed, very long and detailed chapter is Daniel chapter 11. Matter of fact, when you look at Daniel chapter 11, what you will notice it's the longest chapter in the prophecy of Daniel. Chapter 11 spans 45 verses. And so it's a longer chapter than the other chapters of Daniel that we may have read. Whereas, like, for example, chapter 8 is 27 verses, and, it's not as long. But chapter 11 is long. And just to warn you, chapter 11 is a little bit like a soap opera. Yes, it's a little bit like that. What do I mean? Like, you have to actually see the beginning, right? So that Jane is with Bill. Jane is in love with Bill. Bill kind of likes Jane, but he really likes Sue. Sue don't want nothing to do with Bill, but she's entertaining it. But then Sue is with Ben. Ben don't know nothing about all of this. He's just doing his business. You see, it could get real complicated. And so Daniel chapter 11 can be that way. So I want to give you some waymarks. Some spots will help you understand where in history we are when we're reading Daniel chapter 11, because it could be all over the place a little bit, okay? So, for example, when we're looking at Daniel chapter 11, I'm just going to give you some high-level waymarks so that you will understand where we are, okay? So, let's see. Okay, for example, verse 20. Daniel chapter 11, verse 20. I'm just going to give you some high-level waymarks so that you know where these things are happening, okay? So in Daniel chapter 11, and we're going to go back and read the whole thing, but I just want to start off with these waymarks so that as we get to them, you'll know where we are historically. Does that make sense, y'all? So that it helps you see where we are historically, okay? So in Daniel chapter 11, verse 20, it says, "Then shall stand up in his estate a raiser of taxes in the glory of the kingdom, but within a few days he shall be destroyed, neither in anger nor in battle." So we're talking about Rome here, and it says there was in Rome a raiser of taxes. Now, when you look at Luke chapter 2, it'll tell you who that is. And this is a waymark. So when you get to Daniel chapter 11, verse 20, it's telling you in Luke chapter 2 and verse 1, notice what it says in Luke chapter 2, verse 1 and 2. "And it came to pass in those days that there went out a decree from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be taxed. And this taxing was first made when Cyrenius was governor of Syria." So you can kind of know that Daniel chapter 11, verse 20 is coinciding with Luke chapter 2, verse 1 and 2. There stand up in his estate a raiser of taxes. Are you following me so far? So you understand what that is? So that gives you a little waymark to know where in history you are when you're looking at Daniel chapter 11. Okay? It gives you an understanding to know where in history you are. Now, let me give you another example. Daniel chapter 11. Let's see. Daniel chapter 11, 22, verse 22. Actually, verse 21 and 22. So you see Caesar Augustus. All right. Well, let's look at verse 21 and 22. "And in his estate shall stand up a vile person, to whom they shall not give the honor of the kingdom, but he shall come in peaceably and obtain the kingdom by flatteries. and with the arms of a flood they shall be overthrown from before him, and he shall be broken, yea, also the prince of the covenant. So in that Caesar Augustus raises taxes, another guy was going to come, and during his reign, Messiah would be killed. Back to Luke again. Luke chapter 3 tells you who that is. Luke chapter 3, and let's read verse 1 of Luke chapter 3. Now, in the 15th year of the reign of Tiberius Caesar, Pontius Pilate being governor of Judea, Herod being tetrarch of Galilee, and his brother Philip tetrarch of Iturea, of the region of Trachonitis, and Lysanias, the tetrarch of Abilene. So we know that it was during Pontius Pilate's governorship that Messiah was crucified, right? So now when you go back to Daniel, you know that part of Daniel is dealing with Tiberius Caesar, right? You got that? So now you got another waymark. You got another point that says, oh, this is where we are at this point in Daniel chapter 11. So you can see there's certain points, certain waymarks that you can note when you're talking about Daniel chapter 11. Again, let's look back at let's see. There's a number of them, but I'm trying to get some that are obvious that you can recognize. When you read the Bible enough times, you'll see a lot of them. But let's see. Now, you guys heard of Constantine, right? You heard of Constantine, right? Constantine the Great. There was multiple Constantines in the Roman Empire, but the first, Constantine I. Have you ever heard of Constantine? I just want to get seriously. I want to get understand. Have y'all heard of Constantine? Okay, so you know that Constantine was a pagan emperor, and he became a Christian, right? Constantine was a pagan emperor, and he became a Christian, but he became he was where the Catholic Church came from and modern Christianity came from. Constantine, okay? So if you're looking for that, that means that the true Hebrews and the faith of the Hebrews at that time they were trying to change it so that they can all become quote unquote Christians. Yeah, Christians are pagan. That's right, Joe Curry. That's correct. So here in Daniel chapter 11, notice what it says in verse 30, Daniel chapter 11, verse 30, because Revelation describes this under the church called Pergamos. And under Pergamos, it mentions Balaam, who taught Balak to cast a stumbling block before the children of Israel, to eat things sacrificed unto idols and to commit fornication. And look at verse 30. For the ships of Chittim shall come against him, therefore he shall be grieved and return and have indignation against the holy covenant. So shall he do. He shall even return and have intelligence with them that forsake the holy covenant. So Constantine created Christianity, and what Pergamos shows us is that there are people that left the faith of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob for this Christianity in order to gain favor with Constantine. See, so you can see where that is. Again, these are all waymarks. And then later on, the king of France was baptized a Christian. This was 508 AD. And he declared that the Bishop of Rome was the corrector of all heretics. So he gave power and established through that power what became now, as we know, the Roman Catholic Church. And that verse, that goes down to verse, let's see, 36, 37, 38, 39, because from that time, the Roman Catholic Church was now in power, and they gave people like Christopher Columbus authority to do what they did. Right, the little horn. And the establishment of an institution of the little horn called the Roman Catholic Church. So here in chapter 11 of Daniel, verse 36, and again, I'm giving you some high-level overview here. So from verse 36 to 39. And we're going to talk about verse 40 in a second too, but verse 36 to 39. And the king shall do according to his will, and he shall exalt himself and magnify himself above every god, and shall speak marvelous things against the God of gods, and shall prosper till the indignation be accomplished. For that is determined shall be done. Therefore, neither shall he regard the God of his fathers, nor the desire of women, because the Pope's not supposed to have no woman, nor regard any god, for he has magnify himself above all. But in his estate he shall honor the God of forces, a God whom his fathers knew not, shall he honor with gold and silver and precious stones and pleasant things. Thus shall he do in the most strongholds with a strange God, whom he shall acknowledge and increase with glory, and he shall cause them to rule over many, and shall divide the land for gain. There's a key part right there. So what did Christopher Columbus do? He came in different parts of the world. What became Cuba, what became Puerto Rico, what became Haiti, what became Dominican Republic, what became several of these places. And they introduced Christianity, and they took over the land. And they divided the land for gain. Okay, so now we're talking about the institution of the Catholic Church. Because Christopher Columbus had the backing of the king and queen of Spain, even though he was Italian. But he also, of course, the king and queen of Spain and Christopher Columbus, they needed the authority of the Roman Catholic Church. And that's why they were calling these places St. Thomas, St. Vincent, right? Santo Domingo, right? Dominican Republic, right? So that is why you see this verse here, okay? So then verse 40, here's another waymark. Well, let me ask you, we studied Revelation. Some of you were here for that study. So really, you might know. Okay. What was the power that pushed against Rome, that took over Constantinople, that was prophesied about in Revelation chapter 9? Here's a test question. There was a power that fought against Constantinople. That's right. It was Islam. That's very good. Very good. Very good. Very good. So, and what was it called? It was called the Ottoman Empire. Y'all know that, right? The Ottoman Empire was prophesied in Revelation chapter 9 because it pushed against Rome. It was for 150 years. It went from 1303 to 1353 when they officially took over and destroyed and took over and became Istanbul. They took over Constantinople and became modern day Turkey. That's right. So that was what. So here, look at verse 40. At the time of the end shall the king of the south push at him, and the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind, with chariots and with horsemen and many ships, and shall enter into the countries and shall overflow and pass over. So Ottoman Empire pushed at Rome. And since then, from the time of the Ottoman Empire until the end of the Ottoman Empire now to now, what has been going on? Islam has been attacked, has it not? You got a war, first the World War I, they took over, World War II, they took over the oil, right? And then you had the Shah of Iran in place, and you have several dictators that were in place in different countries. And then you end up with bombings happening in Syria, in Iraq, and then you're taking over now with Saudi Arabia and Kuwait. All of that's been going on ever since. And you've been having bombings, killing men, women, and children in places like Muslim places like, what's the name of that place? Bosnia, Serbia. You ever remember that? Bosnia and Serbia. And then, of course, there was Turkey. Turkey's now an ally because they were threatened. And then you got Syria, Jordan, right? And then, of course, bombings in places like Egypt, all to get them to surrender to Israel. And they were all being spanked. He shall come against them like a whirlwind, because all of these different powers, what do you have? You have United Nations forces. Isn't that what you have? It's not just the United States. You got Britain, the United States, Germany, Canada. You got UN forces coming into these places and bombing them. And, they shall come against him like a whirlwind. Yeah, that's what's been going on. Okay, so now I'm just giving you some, again, high-level waymarks so you can see, because it's going to get quite crazy when you start seeing these 4 kings. So let's go back now, Daniel chapter 11, and let's start actually at the end of 10, where Gabriel is telling Daniel about the truth and about Michael. Okay, so Daniel chapter 11, verse 20, and Daniel chapter 10, verse 20 and 21, and then we'll go into chapter 11, because really, the word chapter 11 shouldn't be there. Like I said, 10, 11, and 12 are all one thing. Okay, they just divided it up for, I guess, our sake, right? But you'll see what I mean. In Daniel chapter 10, beginning at verse 20, then said he, knowest thou wherefore I come unto thee? And now will I return to fight against the prince of Persia. And when I am go forth, lo, the prince of Grecia shall come. But I will show thee that which is noted in the scripture of truth, and there is none that holdeth with me in these things, but Michael, your prince. Now, just pretend the word chapter 11 is not there, and read verse 1 of chapter 11. Notice what it says. Also, Gabriel is still speaking. I, in the first year of Darius the Mede, even I stood to confirm and to strengthen him. Now, why would Gabriel say he had to stand and strengthen Darius the Mede? Do you guys remember where you first saw Darius the Mede in the book of Daniel? Tell me where here's another test question. You first saw Darius the Mede before this in the book of Daniel. Where did you see Darius the Mede in the book of Daniel? Where did you first see him? I'm testing y'all now. When did you first see Darius the Mede in the book of, I'm going to show you in a minute, but where did you see Darius? He said in verse 1. Also I, Gabriel says, in the first year of Darius the Mede, even I stood to confirm and to strengthen him. Okay, let's go back. Daniel chapter 5. Daniel chapter 5. You first saw Darius the Mede in Daniel chapter 5 with the writing on the wall. Daniel chapter 5. Let's begin at first. Daniel is now speaking to the king Belshazzar and explaining and interpreting the writing on the wall, right? Daniel chapter 5. Daniel chapter 5. Let's go Daniel chapter 5 from verse 24 down to verse 31. Okay? Daniel chapter 5, verse 24 to verse 31. This is where you first see Darius the Mede. Okay? Then was the part of the hand sent from him, Daniel is saying, and this writing was written. This is the writing that was written. Mene, tekel, uparsin. This is the interpretation of the thing. Mene, Yah has numbered thy kingdom and finished it. Tekel, thou art weighed in the balances and art found wanting. Perez, thy kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. Then commanded Belshazzar, and they clothed Daniel with scarlet and put a chain of gold about his neck and made a proclamation concerning him that he should be the third ruler in the kingdom. And that night was Belshazzar, the king of the Chaldeans, slain. And Darius the Median took the kingdom, being about 62 years old. That's the first time you see Darius. He took the kingdom from Belshazzar. Then chapter 6, you see Darius, and it says, let's begin at verse 1 and 2. It pleased Darius to set over the kingdom 120 princes, which should be over the whole kingdom, and over these 3 presidents, of whom Daniel was first, that the princes might give accounts unto them, and the king should have no damage. So he has 120 princes over 120 provinces, and Daniel is the top of the 3 main ones. He's the top dog. So he's trusting Daniel. Now, why would Gabriel have to come and strengthen Darius the Mede? Well, remember what happened. Darius the Mede was tricked into throwing Daniel into the lion's den. Remember that in Daniel 6? He was tricked into throwing Daniel into the lion's den. That was Darius the Mede. And he was troubled. He was very troubled about doing that because he realized he was took. He was took by the political enemies of Daniel. Remember that? And then at the end of the night, the Bible says he couldn't sleep. He didn't eat. He didn't want to see nobody. He passed the night so that and then the next day he came and they had him roll away the stone of the lions. And it said, the Bible says in a lamentable voice, O Daniel, is thy God whom thou servest continually able to deliver thee? And Daniel cried out, yes, live forever, O king. And the king made a decree. This was all, this is Gabriel saying, I was strengthening that king. Right? Let's go back to Daniel chapter 11, verse 1. It says, also I, in the first year of Darius the Mede, even I stood to confirm and to strengthen him. So the Most High was all over that. In other words, he shut the lion's mouth, as Daniel said, and he was also talking to Darius the Mede. You see, telling him, Daniel's my guy. You know Daniel's my guy. You got to get this right, brother. Come on now. And so the next day, he took Daniel out that lion's den and put all those presidents, the political enemies, and their families in that den. Remember that? And the lions ate them all. See, this was that Darius. See, so Gabriel said, I confirm and strengthen Darius the Mede. Okay, so you see that? So now you see that why Gabriel was saying that. So now I just want to also tell you, from this point on, all the way to the end of Daniel, it's Gabriel talking. Okay, just remember that. So from this point, from Daniel chapter 10, all the way through to the end of chapter 12, Gabriel is doing all the talking. Daniel is just listening. Okay, praise the Most High. So Gabriel's doing all the talking right now, and Daniel's just listening, and of course he's writing, just as John. Remember, he said, write the things which thou hast seen and the things which you heard. Well, now Daniel is writing. So now Daniel is writing, Gabriel is talking. Okay. Verse 2, Daniel chapter 11, verse 2. Now will I show thee the truth. Behold, there shall stand up yet 3 kings in Persia, and the 4th shall be far richer than they all. And by his strength through his riches, he shall stir up the realm against the realm, stir up all against the realm of Grecia. So now let's stop. He said there's going to be 3 Persian kings after this one. So you had this king, if you recall, in the beginning of Daniel chapter 10, Cyrus, the Persian king. Cyrus gave the first decree. He said there's going to be 3 more Persian kings, and we know them. Notice there's another man named Darius. He's not Darius the Mede. He's Darius the Persian. There's 2 Dariuses. So there's Darius the Persian, and we know about Artaxerxes, the Persian king, and then there was the king that was king in Esther called Ahasuerus. You remember that? And Ahasuerus was king over 120 provinces, and they said he's the richest one of all. So you had Darius, you had Cyrus the first, then there was Darius, Artaxerxes, and then Ahasuerus. You have all of these kings of Persia. And so now Daniel kind of knows about Persian being divided into 4. He knows about Greek being divided into 4, and he knows that there's a Persian kings, but now he's being told how many they would be of the Persian kings. Now, later on, Ezra, which came after Daniel, Ezra and Nehemiah, they would tell you, and as we saw that, let's look at Ezra chapter 6. Ezra chapter 6. Look at Ezra chapter 6, and it tells you here in Ezra chapter 6, verse 14, Ezra chapter 6, verse 14, and the elders of the Jews builded, and they prospered through the prophesying of Haggai. This is Ezra chapter 6, verse 14. And the elders of the Jews builded, and they prospered through the prophesying of Haggai the prophet, and Zechariah the son of Iddo. And they built it and finished it according to the commandment of the Most High of Israel, according to the commandment of Cyrus and Darius and Artaxerxes, king of Persia. See, Cyrus, Darius, and Artaxerxes. And then when you read Esther, when you look at Esther chapter 1, Esther chapter 1, verse 1, Esther chapter 1, verse 1. And it says, now it came to pass in the days of Ahasuerus, this is Ahasuerus, which reigned from India even unto Ethiopia, and 127 provinces, that in those days when Ahasuerus, in those days when the king Ahasuerus sat on the throne of the kingdom, which was in Shushan the palace, in the 3rd year of his reign, he made a feast. See, he was the richest of all of them. So he was partying up, right? So you have, he said, Gabriel told Daniel, after Cyrus the Persian, there's going to be 3 more kings in Persia. So Daniel knew there were going to be 3 more kings. Why was that important? Because there was going to come a Greek kingdom after that. So he's telling Daniel there's 3 more kings, and then the Greek kingdom was going to come. Everybody, you with me so far? So okay. So I just want to make sure everybody's on the same page as we go through all of these paths. So you have now Persian King Cyrus, which told him to go back and build the temple. And then you have the other King Darius. You have another King Artaxerxes, which say build Jerusalem. And then you got Ahasuerus, who was with Esther, right? So now you have 4 kings in Persia. And he said, and let's go back to Daniel chapter 11, verse 2. Now will I show thee the truth. Behold, there shall stand up yet 3 kings in Persia, and the 4th shall be far richer than they all. And by his strength, through his riches, he shall stir up all against the realm of Grecia. So now Grecia gonna be like, Alexander gonna be like, them dudes got a lot of money, man. They got a lot of gold over there. It'd be a shame if somebody discovered it. Maybe somebody should go to Persia and discover it. You know what, Manny? That's a good question. Manny asks, does Medes only have 1 king? Well, I don't know, but what I do know is Darius the Mede is the only one that was mentioned here in Daniel. So I don't know if they might have been. I don't know, honestly. I can't say. But I can say that Darius is the only one that was mentioned here in Daniel, right? So you saw Darius in chapter 6, and then after that, you see Belshazzar 7 and 8. And then after that, you see Cyrus, the Persian king. Okay, so yeah, I don't know how many Median kings there were, but we know about Darius, and that's one again. And that, of course, why would we know about Darius above any other that might have been mentioned? Because Darius was closely aligned to the Hebrew Israelite prophet. Okay, yeah. So Alexander's looking. You know that meme with the dude be going like this? He's looking, right? And he says, dang, them boys got a lot of money over there. They got a lot of gold over there. They like to party a lot. Maybe we should discover Persia. And we know what happened. Alexander came. He was the rough goat with the notable horn. He's being the notable horn of Greece. Okay. And then, verse 3, Daniel chapter 11, verse 3. And a mighty king shall stand up that shall rule with great dominion and shall do according to his will. Verse 4. And when he shall stand up, his kingdom shall be broken and shall be divided toward the 4 winds of heaven, not to his posterity, nor according to his dominion, which he ruled. For his kingdom shall be plucked up, even for others beside those. So we can see now, right? You can see what we already know, what Daniel already knew. So here come Alexander. He's only 30 when he takes over the world. He's 19 when he starts. He's one of the youngest generals and most successful in the history of all the children of Yafet. So he's at 19 years old when he first leads an army. 19 when he first leads an army. I mean, compare that to Darius the Median. Darius the Median took the kingdom at age 62, something you would expect. But here's this 19-year-old kid. And apparently, from what I read, the boy was a military genius, right? And so here he comes, and he's 30 years old when he took the kingdom. Okay, but of course he died before he was 33. He died. Many say it was alcohol poisoning, but it was some sort of poisoning. And so we see his kingdom was divided into 4, and it was divided into north, south, east, and west. Okay, so let me give you all what's about to happen here so you don't get confused. It was divided into north, south, east, and west. It said it was divided toward the 4 winds of heaven, just like Daniel 8 told us. Let's look at Daniel 8 again. Daniel chapter 8. I'm going to read verse 8. Daniel chapter 8, verse 8. Therefore, the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken, and for it came up 4 notable ones toward the 4 winds of heaven. See, same kingdom. And then let's go back to Daniel chapter 7. Daniel chapter 7, verse 6. Daniel 7, verse 6. After this, I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. The beast had also 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. All of this is the same Greek empire. Okay, all of it. Notice this looks like a leopard. How does a okay? There's a difference between how, let's say, a cheetah attacks its prey and how a leopard attacks its prey. 2 different ways they do it. Like a cheetah will see the prey coming, and they'll just watch. What are they watching for? They're looking for the slowest, weakest one. That's what the cheetah will do. So the cheetah's just watching, and you almost thinking they don't pay attention. They're seeing the gazelles run by, and they're just watching. They don't do anything. And then when they spot the weakest one, they take off. And I've seen documentaries where they say cheetahs reach 70 miles per hour by their 3rd stride. Can you imagine? They reach 70 miles an hour by their 3rd stride. So in 3 strides, they're at 70 miles an hour. And if you see a cheetah, that brother could float. And so they catch whatever they catch. They got the 2 fangs. They hit the throat in the jugular, kill their victim. It's the slowest one. And then they got their food, right? Now, a leopard is much different. A leopard creeps up on its prey. You don't know what leopard is coming. He can't get you from a long distance. He gets you from a short. If you look at the leopard's legs and the cheetah's leg, cheetah got long legs. Cheetah got big lungs and long feet and long legs, and it walks on his tiptoes everywhere. And it's built for speed. A cheetah is built for speed, but a leopard got short legs, short, powerful legs, and a big, thick neck. And it creeps up, and and a leopard will creep up on you for 10, 12 hours just watching. Creep up on you. Will make sure that they're in the right place so that the wind doesn't blow their scent toward the prey, and then come at the right angle. And at the last minute, before you know what happened, boom, he's on you very quickly, and he kills you within split seconds. It's not even a big, long fight with a leopard. Then he just takes you away, put you in his tree, and he's got his dinner. See? So that's how leopard. This one was described like a leopard. So nobody knew that this brother was coming for him, but he was coming. Okay, he said, "Oh, I got to discover Persia." So he's coming at Persia. Now he did it. He overcame Persia at age 30. He took over the whole earth, took over Persia, the Median Persia Empire. Okay, that's the same one in Daniel chapter 11, divided toward the 4 winds. Now, let's go back to them 4 divisions. There's north, south, east, and west. I want to make sure you got that. There's northern. So in other words, his 4 generals, you had a king that took over the north. That's the north king. You had a king that took over the south. That's the king of the south. You had a king that took over the west. That's the king of the west. And you had a king that took over the east. That's the king of the east. Okay, y'all got me so far? So out of the Greek Empire, you had 4 kings. The north king, the south king, the east king, and the west king. Okay, I want to make sure we got that. Okay, before I go forward, this is what we're about to read about. Okay, now, out of the 4, they immediately began trying to take over each other's territory. That makes sense, right? And the children of Yefet and the greed and all that. So they immediately try to take over each other's territory. They're immediately trying to conquer each other's territory. Okay, and remember what Daniel said in chapter 2. Daniel chapter 2. Let's go back again. Again, all that Daniel's been shown before now is helping him and us understand what's happening in chapter 11. But let's go to Daniel chapter 2. I'm going to start at verse 40. I'm going to start at verse 40, and go down to verse 43. Okay, Daniel chapter 2 from verse 40 to verse 43. And the 4th kingdom shall be strong as iron, for as much as iron breaketh in pieces and subdueth all things, and as iron that breaketh all these, shall it break in pieces and bruise. Whereas thou sawest the feet and toes, part is clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in it of the strength of the iron. For as much as thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, and as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. Why did I bring that up? Because even when the four kingdoms were divided, the empire was divided into four, they were trying different ways to consolidate the empire. They were trying to marry, make cousins. They did that a lot, especially in the children of Yefet's kingdoms. They try to marry. That's why they call they try to call people by what they say. You are, what they call it? You are royalty. You are royal seed. And some people think that even presidents of the United States have to have some sort of connection to royal seeds in England or in Europe. So they have royal seed and they try to connect each other through marriage. That happened a lot in Europe during the Middle Ages. They would try, cousins would marry each other, or they'd have different kingdoms, and they try to connect the kingdom by the bloodlines. Y'all ever heard of that? So they try to connect the Coburg kingdom, the kingdom of Victoria. Princess Queen Victoria was connected with the Coburg for her husband, and they try to connect. And the Coburg kingdom was Netherlands, and they're trying to connect the kingdom so that somebody will end up reigning, right? So they did that. Right, royal houses, exactly. They did that, and when that didn't work, they just straight fight for it, right? They just come out and fight for it. So you're going to see that in Daniel chapter 11. They're going to try to mingle each other with the seed of men. They're going to try to fight. They're going to do all kinds of things because one power wants to power everybody else. Now, before we go forward in Daniel chapter 11, let me explain this to you. So we know now Greek is going to be divided into four. We already know that. North, south, east, and west, each with his own king. At the end of it, before we finish Daniel 11, there's going to be two, north and south. Quickly, east and west is taken over, and it's just north and south. Okay, now, the northern part is called Seleucus. The southern part is called Ptolemy. Okay, the northern part is called Seleucus. The southern part is called Ptolemy. Y'all got me? And so they take over the whole realm. And it's between them two, the north and the south. At the end, it's the north. No problem. So at the end, it's just the north. Exactly, Will. Why do we say the north? Because it's out of the north that Rome comes, that the little horn comes. So you start off with four, then it's two. And then eventually Ptolemy becomes Islam. And then Islam and Rome are adversaries, whereas Rome helped actually create Islam in order to take over. But instead, Islam didn't allow you to take over, and they started battling, and at the end, it's King of the North. So that when you get to the end of Daniel chapter 11, it's only King of the North, and you're dealing with the Vatican. Does that make sense, y'all? I just want to make sure so that when we go through all of this, you see how this plays out. So at the end of it, you're beginning, you're going to have four kings, north, south, east, and west. Then it's just going to be north and south, and then there's just going to be north. Okay, and north is going to win that skirmish, and that's how Daniel 11 is playing out. Okay, and then out of the north come the little horn. And again, let's go back to Daniel chapter 8 for that one. Daniel chapter 8, verse 9. Daniel chapter 8, verse 9. Talking about the four divisions, verse 9 of Daniel chapter 8. Now, of one of them, that out of the four divisions, came forth the little horn, which waxed exceeding great toward the south and toward the east and toward the pleasant land, which was in the west. The south, the east, and the pleasant land, which means it came out of the north. And so that's when the little horn come out of the north. So we know already when we're looking at Daniel 11, at the end of all of this, at the end of Daniel 11, you're only going to have the King of the North, and the King of the North represents Vatican. And it starts off with Seleucus, and it turns into the Caesars, and eventually it's the Holy Roman Empire and the Vatican. So all of that is King of the North. I just want to make sure you're okay. Good. Praise the Most High. I just try to be thorough so that it could be confusing, and I just want to just make sure we're all on the same page. Okay, so now Daniel chapter 11, verse 4. Let's go to verse 4 and 5. And now we're getting into these skirmishes and the marriages and all kind of things that they try to do to consolidate the kingdom. So Daniel chapter 11, beginning at verse 4 and 5. And when he shall stand up, his kingdom shall be broken and shall be divided toward the 4 winds of heaven, and not according to his posterity, nor according to his dominion which he ruled. For his kingdom shall be plucked up, even for others beside those. Rome, right? For the king of the south shall be strong, and one of his princes, and he shall be strong above him and have dominion. His dominion shall be a great dominion. Okay, so the king of the south starts off in the lead. It's like the race between the turtle and the rabbit, right? The rabbit takes off first. So Ptolemy in Egypt, and that's what happened. Egypt, you all know that the capital was called Alexandria, and that's after Alexander. That's why. And even to this day, you know, a lot of people that are in Egypt have their origin in Greece and in Europe and in Germany because of this time when they were coming and mingling their seed with the Egyptians. You want to know who the true Hamites are that were original Egyptians? Just look for the poorest ones, the one in the slums, the one in the south. Those are your darker ones. Those are your original Egyptians. But the other ones now have come in from the north, and they've come in as Muslims because that was what the king of the south became, Islam. And so you have Islam as the dominant religion in Egypt, okay, to now. So that's why the king of the south was based in what's now Egypt. It was Ptolemy. And so again, verse 5, and the king of the south shall be strong, and one of his princes, and he shall be strong above him and have dominion. His dominion shall be a great dominion. So king of the south had a prince. That prince became even more powerful than the original king of the south, Ptolemy. Verse 6, and at the end of years, they shall join themselves together, for the king's daughter of the south shall come to the king of the north to make an agreement. But she shall not retain the power of the arm, neither shall he stand nor his arm, but she shall be given up. And they that brought her, and he that begot her, see, it gets confused, and he that strengthened her in these times. So to make all of that short, Ptolemy had a daughter, tried to marry the daughter into the kingdom of the north, but it didn't work. It didn't work, okay? Remember, they tried to mingle themselves with the seed of men. So Ptolemy's kingdom had a daughter. They tried to marry that daughter into the king of the north, Seleucus' kingdom, to try to solidify the kingdom. Didn't work. Okay, didn't work. Okay, all right. Verse 7. But out of a branch of her roots shall one stand up in his estate, which shall come with an army, and shall enter into the fortress of the king of the north, and shall deal against him, and shall prevail. So again, king of the south is pushing. And the daughter thing didn't work. But they starting to now gather an army against king of the north, and they prevailing. Looks like they're going to win, right? All right, verse 8. And shall also carry captives into Egypt their gods with their princes and their precious vessels of silver and gold, and shall continue more years than the king of the north. So the king of the south, the Greek empire, is under the king of the south. All of this, now, just to let y'all know, is part of the Greek empire at this point. This is all Greek empire, and the king of the south is part of the Greek empire, and this is now part of their domination. Okay, verse 9. So the king of the south shall come into his kingdom and shall return into his own land. But his sons shall be stirred up and shall assemble a multitude of great forces, and one shall certainly come and overthrow and pass through. Then shall he return and be stirred up even to his fortress. Verse 11, and the king of the south shall be moved with choler, that is anger, and shall come forth and fight with him, even with the king of the north. And he shall set forth a great multitude, but the multitude shall be given into his hand. So verse 11 of Daniel 11, you see the switch from the power being king of the south to now the power being king of the north. And now you know who that is. King of the north now is the Roman Empire. So now the king of the north takes over. And out of Seleucus comes, before the little horn even, comes the Roman Empire. Okay, you all see that so far? So when Messiah appears the first time, it wasn't the Vatican. It was the Roman Empire, right? We talk about Claudius Caesar, Tiberius Caesar, Caesar Augustus, right? So all of that happened during the Roman Empire. So now you start off, King of the North is the Roman Empire. Now, eventually, we know the little horn will come out of that, and that's the Pope, the Roman Catholic Church, out of the King of the North. But for this point, he's just overcoming the South. That is the King of the North. And from this point on, from chapter 11, verse 11 on, this is all about the happenings of Rome, okay? Starting with Caesar's and going into Vatican, okay? So from this point, chapter 11, verse 11, all the way through till you get to, you get all the way down into the 30s, you're dealing with Roman Empire, okay? And so after that, you go back and you're dealing with, now after that, Catholic Church, okay? Okay, y'all got me so far? Everybody with that so far? So you can see there was 4 out of Alexander's kingdom. Then there was 2. Now there's 1. Okay, so you had 4, and Ptolemy was in the south. Seleucus was in the north. Then you had 1. Seleucus. That was it. And it was his family, and it was his geographic area. That's what it really was, his geographic area, out of which came the Roman Empire. Okay, out of the north. All right. Daniel chapter 11, verse 12, down to verse 14. Now, let me just also explain this. This period that we're dealing with right here, from this point, is between the testaments. Okay. Now, there's a book in Apocrypha that deals with that. It is the, oh goodness, I forgot the name of the book, but there's a book in the Apocrypha that deals with between the testaments. It's supposedly a Levite family, the Maccabees. This is the Maccabees period. Okay, y'all have heard of Maccabees? So this is dealing with the Maccabee period right here, from verse 12 all the way till you get to when you see the raiser of taxes. This is dealing with the Maccabee period, which is between the testaments. Y'all following me? So this is Daniel's given from Gabriel, the events between the Old Testament and the New Testament. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. The Maccabees is it's like, there's a couple of sections in the Apocrypha of Maccabees, as far as I remember. I read the Apocrypha once, and I read through the Maccabees. The Maccabees was really the only believable part. Aside from Ezra, I got to give you that too. The Ezra part and the Maccabees part, that stuff about Daniel and the rest of it, but the Maccabees part and the part about Ezra, which is really a combination of Ezra and Nehemiah in the Bible, that's what that is. But the Maccabees part is really, I don't trust the rest of this stuff. But the Maccabees part is between the testaments. And so you're getting that here in Daniel chapter 11. So from chapter 11, so now you're getting between the testaments. Okay? You're getting between the testaments. And you'll see when I read this. Watch this. This is from chapter 11 of Daniel, from verse 12 to verse 16. Chapter 11 of Daniel, from verse 12. Actually, let's start from verse 12 to 14. That's more to the point. So Daniel chapter 11, from verse 12 to verse 14. And when he had taken away the multitude, his heart shall be lifted up, and he shall cast down many 10,000s, but he shall not be strengthened by it. For the king of the north shall return and set forth a multitude greater than the former, and shall certainly come after many years with a great army and with much riches. And in those times there shall many stand up against the king of the south. Also the robbers of thy people, that is of Daniel's people, shall exalt themselves to establish the vision, but they shall fail. What does that mean? The robbers of thy people shall exalt themselves to establish the vision. Just to let you know, remind you now. Remember, anytime they just say the vision, here's a quiz question. Whenever Gabriel says to Daniel, the vision, what is he talking about? That's a test question. So wherever Gabriel says to Daniel, the vision, what is he talking about? Because he says it a couple of times. Yes, but specific period. That's right. That's Psalms 119. Whenever he talks about the vision, he's talking about the 2300 days. Remember, he said, seal up the vision. That's for chapter 8. Then he says, consider the vision. Right? And then in Daniel 10, he mentions the vision because the time is long. All of that is the same 2,300 days. And within that 2,300 days, as we know, the first 490 years is to Israel. Y'all got that part? He says 70 weeks are determined or separated. The first 490 years, Daniel, is for Israel. Y'all got that? So now he says, in verse 14, he says, also the robbers of thy people shall exalt themselves to establish division, but they shall fail. What that mean? That means they're going to act so stupid that they're almost going to try to fulfill the prophecy of them being destroyed before their time. Because they're trying to rob. They're supposed to be Israelites and they're robbing their own people. Wait a minute. We have in the New Testament a name for them. They formed an institution. No, they formed an institution. In the New Testament, there's a name for them. What they call? Y'all know. And they were robbing the people. They were robbing the people. Who is that? Who in the New Testament formed a group that was robbing? The Sadducees and the Pharisees, otherwise known as the Sanhedrin. So the Sanhedrin during this time between the testaments was created. And you know it was created between the testaments. How do we know? Because you never heard no prophet in the Old Testament mention any Sanhedrin, right? Ezra never mentioned any Sanhedrin. Nehemiah never mentioned any Sanhedrin. Moses certainly didn't mention any Sanhedrin. But all of a sudden you get Messiah and there's a Sanhedrin there. And you got two high priests. Right? Pharisees and so he says, the robbers of thy people shall exalt themselves to establish division. But it says, but they shall fall. There you go. Y'all got me? Y'all follow me? So it's telling you of the establishment of the Sanhedrin. And when you get to Luke, it tells you had Caiaphas, who was the high priest, and Annas, his father. When did Moses ever give them two high priests? Because it was political, and they were in bed with Rome and in bed with the Edomite king. That's right. And so they were the robbers of Daniel's people. Yeah, all of a sudden, you Micah, Nehemiah, Malachi, Isaiah, they never talked about prophesied about some Sanhedrin. You understand? Where'd this come from? The robbers of thy people trying to establish division. In other words, they're the ones that's going to cause this whole thing, cause your city, cause your sanctuary to be destroyed. The robbers of thy people, establishing the vision. Does that make sense, y'all? You following me so far? That makes sense to everybody. So when he talks about that, they shall establish themselves, exalt themselves to establish. That's the Sanhedrin. Messiah said, y'all are hypocrites. And y'all steal from the people and you change the law of Moses and you make your own laws up so that you could get paid. There you go. See how the Bible tells you everything. See that? Now I told y'all about Apocrypha, right? But here it is right here. In just a couple of sentences. Apocrypha takes like 4 divisions to tell you what Daniel just told you in 3 verses. Daniel told you in 3 verses what they tried to write out in books, a whole bunch of history, right? Daniel told you in 3 verses right here. Right here. Praise the Most High. Okay, so now during this portion of Daniel 11, the power of Rome is being established. The power of the Roman Empire is being established. Now look at verse 15. So the king of the north shall come and cast up a mount and take the most fenced cities, and the arms of the south shall not withstand, neither his chosen people, neither shall there be any strength to withstand. So now you can see king of the north, that is the Roman Empire. And as you know, historically speaking, I'm saying Rome had an army, and they came with different types of swords and shields that was different than the Greeks used, different than anybody used. And they started a way of warfare that had not been really seen or used before. And their army just took over. They took over. They were just too much for everybody. Okay, and that's what happened. They could not withstand. So now, verse 15, now, again, you have the establishment of the Roman Empire. And from now 16, you're dealing with the solidification of the Roman Empire, and you're dealing with various emperors of Rome. And that's why I say when you get to chapter 20, you know you're dealing with Tiberius Caesar, right? And Caesar Augustus, the raiser of taxes, when you get to chapter verse 20, right? So right now we're in verse 16, and Rome is established. Now Rome is the power, okay, over everybody, including Israel. You have your Sadducees. And that's why, again, let's look at Luke chapter 3, just to see, gives us the whole scene here. Luke chapter 3, notice how Luke worded this, okay? And notice the difference between this and, let's say, David's kingdom, all right? Let's say David's kingdom. Notice how this is, and notice David's kingdom in Israel. Okay, Luke chapter 3, beginning at verse 1, looking from verse 1 and 2 of Luke chapter 3. Verse 1 and 2 of Luke chapter 3. Now in the 15th year of the reign of Tiberius Caesar, Pontius Pilate being governor of Judea, a heathen, Herod being tetrarch of Galilee, a Edomite, and his brother Philip, an Edomite, tetrarch of Iturea, and of the region of Trachonitis, and Licinius, the tetrarch of Abilene, Annas and Caiaphas being high priests. When did Moses say y'all gonna have two high priests? Y'all find that verse somewhere? Did Moses ever say, okay, Aaron, there's gonna be two high priests? The word of Yah came to John, the son of Zacharias, in the wilderness. So you can see now, you got a whole different setup that what was under David. You got a whole different setup. David, Israel's a sovereign nation, 12 tribes strong. David's got garrisons all over the place. Nobody messing with David. Here, you're being run by the heathen. The children of Yefet control you. You got your own corrupt religion in there with the Sanhedrin, two high priests splitting power with the Edomites and the the heathens. That's what you got, okay, to show you where they was, all right, to show you where they was. And again, Daniel 11 is showing you that, okay? So Daniel 11, verse 16, let's read from verse 16 down to verse 20. Daniel 11, we'll finish at verse 20 for today. Daniel 11 from verse 16 down to verse 20. But he that cometh against him shall do according to his own will, and none shall stand before him. And he shall stand in the glorious land which by his hand shall be consumed. Glorious land is always Israel. He shall stand in the glorious land, which by his hand shall be consumed. So he's telling you, by the Roman power, Israel's going to be consumed. He shall also set his face to enter into the strength of his whole kingdom, and upright ones with him. Thus shall he do, and he shall give him the daughter of women, corrupting her, but she shall not stand on his side, neither before him. Again, there's the marriage part, trying to connect things, trying to get in through marriage. But after this, shall he turn his face unto the isles, and shall take many. But a prince for his own behalf shall cause the reproach offered by him to cease. Without his own reproach, he shall cause it to turn upon him. Again, this is confusing stuff, but this is all about the establishment of the king of the north. Just remember that part, and you won't be confused. Then shall he turn his face toward the fort of his own land, but he shall stumble and fall and not be found. Then shall stand up in his estate, here's a waymark, in his estate, a raiser of taxes in the glory of the kingdom, but within a few days he shall be destroyed, neither in anger nor in battle. So there you go. Chapter 11, verse 20 takes you to Luke chapter 2 in verse 1, and it tells you exactly where you are. This is the birth of Messiah. Luke chapter 2 and verse 1. And it came to pass in those days that there went out a decree from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be taxed. And this taxing was first made when Cyrenius was governor of Syria. Okay, there you go. So now at that time, they raised your taxes. Verse 20 of Daniel 11, Miriam is pregnant with the Messiah, and Messiah is about to be born. This is under Caesar Augustus. Okay, there you go, verse 20. So you know verse 20 of Daniel 11 is Caesar Augustus. Okay, All right. We'll stop here for now, but we covered a lot today. And we actually got through a lot of what could be confusing information. Praise the Most High. But again, just remember it's north, south, east, and west out of the Greek Empire, and it ends up being north. And that's where we are right now. From this point on, it's all King of the North. Now you're going to see different iterations, for lack of a better word, of the King of the North. First iteration is the Roman Empire under the Caesars. Then later you're going to see an iteration of Constantine and Christianity. And then, of course, you're going to have the Vatican iteration, which is the final iteration. Then it's going to tell you what Vatican's going to cause to happen. And we'll go through that as we continue next week in Daniel chapter 11. Praise the Most High. So let's stop here at verse 20, and then we'll pick it up from there. By grace of the Most High. Hey, wait a minute. Next Friday, we're going to be in Mystic Dooms. Next Friday, we're going to be in Mystic Doom. So we're going to be doing this online on Friday night. But, and a lot of y'all going to see it just like this from Mystic Dooms. But some of y'all going to be live and direct. Isn't that right? So next Friday night, we're actually going to start earlier next Friday night because it's from 6 to 9. We have that room. So we're going to probably start at about 8 o'clock. We're going to be getting together at 6, meeting and stuff, and then have some dinner. And then after that, from about 8 o'clock, we'll be doing the Bible study, 7:30, 8 o'clock, whenever we're finished eating. They're going to start serving the food though at 6 o'clock on Friday night. Yes, we're still doing Wednesday here. Just the same setup on Wednesday. Still doing Wednesday. Thursday is when we meet at Mystic Dooms from 6 o'clock. People start checking in. Check-in is at 4. Remember that. Check-in is at 4 at Mystic Dooms. Okay. And so everybody will be checking in. Hopefully a lot of y'all will be checked in and settled by the time 6 o'clock comes. We'll meet. And some of y'all I know are coming later, and we'll meet in the ballroom that we have set up already. And so there we are. So we'll talk about that more on Wednesday night, and I'll be emailing you guys also, giving you some more directions, okay? And if you have any questions, you know how to catch me on my email. Praise the Most High. May the Most High bless you and keep you. Yes, traveling mercies to all the brothers and sisters that are traveling. Most High bless you and keep you. The Most High cause his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. The Most High lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Shalom.